Hi everybody, how you doing? My name is Alistair and I'm your subject coordinator in this subject, and I want to take you through now a very quick bridge. This session is orientated to gently walk you from the sessions we've done previously to the fundamentals of naturopathic medicine, which as natural medicine practitioners in the 21st century we all need to know. But this is also about the history of healing. So we need a session on the fundamentals of health throughout history. And I'm in the UK right now, and I was looking at breakfast television, as I never do. But anyway, and on the show was on this news broadcast was a description of what's going on in British hospitals when it comes to food. Astonishing. People were sending in their photos of the food they're being served in a hospital. One of the things I love about the Endeavour College Open Days is that slide. I don't know if you went to one of our open days. Is the slide that's got the facts about the nutritional content of the animals in the zoo. In other words, that if you go to the zoo and you're outside the chimpanzee cage or the giraffe thing, or the snake, whatever, that it's got all the nutritional information about what the creatures are eating. And yet the humans at the zoo have got the kiosk with 3-day-old sandwiches and the machine you put your money in, and it spits out bags of chips and sugary drinks. Just a really interesting juxtaposition there about our perceptions of health and how they are inconsistent and how they've changed over time. So we're going to talk about all sorts of things. We're going to talk about sleep. We're going to talk about exercise. We're going to talk about hygiene, and we're going to talk about nutrition. Sleep. What does it mean? What's the right amount? I don't know. From sunset to sunrise to on the run. Naps, cat naps. What's your version of healthy sleep? What do you do? Exercise, from once hunting, gathering, running short distances, and then sleeping in the cave, to the world of the computer that we're all spending time with. Hygiene, the role of hygiene in disease. Does it matter? What are these things? Bugs. And are they really the cause of disease? And of course, food. Yep, from gathering to, I don't know, perceptions of food that we deal with from especially the media as well. It's a really interesting question, isn't it? What are the fundamentals of health for you? I mean, I'm having my Blue Pod Nespresso coffee, which I'm quite enjoying this morning. Do you drink coffee? Are you of the opinion that coffee is evil? Do you drink wheatgrass shots? What's healthy for you? What are the fundamental building blocks? What do you teach your kids? What were you taught yourself? Does it matter? An amazing opinion I heard from a 70-year-old woman recently was when she was breastfeeding, child to the breast, cigarette in one hand, glass of wine in the other. And her physician said to her, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what you drink. It can be gin or wine. Just get liquid in you when you're breastfeeding. This was the advice in the 1960s and 70s. Perceptions of health change over time. So there's a great reflective question for you. What would your mother or your grandmother say was important in establishing and maintaining health? What do you think is important in establishing and maintaining health? How much exercise? We're just going to talk around some of these factoids around stress, opinions about the cause of the disease, and how we seem to be going evolving and then devolving as well. Your opinions about nutrition, things to avoid, things to do if you're going to avoid getting sick. Are you interested or obsessed with the Atkins diet, the paleo diet, the low carb diet, the high whatever diet? Different perceptions of nutrition and weird factoids that just come out of the ether every now and again. Let's start with sleep. Do you get enough? How much do you have? Why? Is it inconsistent? Are you affected by the moon? Why is your sleep affected? Do you wake up easily? Did you know the cycles of sleep that we know? Interesting facts about sleep. This phase, this rhythm, this opportunity that seems to come every 90 minutes or so to allow us to drop into sleep. And the role of, as you'll learn in your bioscience subjects, dopamine, melatonin, and serotonin in that necessary sleep cycle. Sleep for me, sleep for naturopathic medicine, sleep for many natural medicine practitioners is one of the fundamentals that we look to and that we ask about at the outset. It's very hard to function brilliantly in the world without sleep. You know what it's like. You lose access to your sense of humour, to your creativity, to your sharpness when you're fatigued, when you're not getting enough sleep. And what about how it changes in different places? What about how in some countries you see in Barcelona kids with their parents heading out for dinner at midnight? You see in Asia, in markets, kids sleeping in all sorts of places. Does it affect their health? Who knows? What's ideal for you? What were you taught? Is it 7 hours? Is it 8 hours? It clearly changes for different ages and for males and females. Teenage boys need a lot of sleep. Why, in that case, do we have school starting at 8 o'clock in the morning or whenever it starts? What about when you're traveling and you see in Asian airports, everybody just having that micro sleep, bang, as soon as they stop, sleep. They've got that capacity to refuel really quickly, something that I thankfully have taught myself over the years, to have that quick power nap and then back into it again. But sleep is a fundamental of health, and its role and its emphasis has clearly changed over time. And with the amount of stimulation that we now have through media, through the television and the iPad and the phone and the whatever, it's just clearly being influenced, isn't it? And in terms of what the right thing is to do, you can only work that out yourself. But you will come to some sort of understanding of the role of sleep and how important it is, and be educating your clients around that in the next few years. Are you any good at naps as opposed to solid sleep? And the question sometimes that we get asked is, can naps be used in place of a good 7 or 8 hours of sleep? Is it possible to oversleep? Is another important question that we're asked at times. And of course, sleep is, as I said, impacted by what we're eating, our behaviours, our hygiene around sleep, especially in the middle part of the evening. Speaking of hygiene, not sleep hygiene, but hygiene has changed clearly over time, and to the extent now that we're bombarded with antiseptic wipes and buying this type of product, and every room or every corridor has a dispenser of something which you can wipe on your hands, which miraculously disappears and apparently kills stuff. Doesn't matter. Really? Does it really matter? I loved once I was lecturing in a college, and a student left the room, went to the toilet, but I just noticed that as she got near to the front door, her arm slipped inside her sleeve, and she opened the door with her sleeve as opposed to her hands. Did the same thing when she came back. So hygiene and our perceptions of hygiene have also changed over time. Yes, as populations have grown together, have come together in large and larger and larger and even larger cities, our attitudes to that have changed. Our attitudes to what we do with waste. No longer do we throw it into the street, or do we? That's an interesting one. But we don't seem to open windows and throw the slops out the window into the street and the passers-by below. There is an obsession in some parts of the world with washing hands and antibacterial things, as I mentioned before. This is new. This is not something that human beings have done for a significant amount of time. Another fundamental of health, in addition to sleep, hygiene, is stress and how much we allow in our lives and what we do with that in our lives. It's argued in some quarters that a little bit of stress is absolutely necessary. A little bit of anxiety is a good thing. Because if you didn't have it, if you didn't have anxiety or stress or looked around the corner before you got to the corner, then that saber-toothed tiger might get you. And the role of the type of stimulation we have in the 21st century and the role that that has, the increased cortisol in chemical terms, that we have flying around our body in the 21st century is absolutely different to what it was in previous times. Nevertheless, it's not as if there was never a time of any stress, but it seems that the amount of it and the continued high level of it is the thing that's new, with deadlines, with the way we're supposed to present ourselves, look, the types of constant ongoing stresses, pressures, information coming towards us increases that level of cortisol, so that, whereas once before it is entirely healthy, normal and going to keep you alive, if cortisol flows around your body as soon as that saber-toothed tiger comes into the horizon, you run. That's a healthy response. But when in the 21st century you're living with that same level of saber-toothed tigerness, when, you know what, there just isn't one, that is a real strain on the human body, increasing our levels of fatigue, requiring us to have more sleep and creating all sorts of health dramas along the way. Sleep, hygiene, stress, exercise. Oh, here we go. So, what's the right amount? What do you do? What does anyone do? You know, in terms of exercise, we know that we're supposed to. Some do, some don't. Traditional cultures, it's interesting to look at that hunter and gathering, those traditions, and look at how healthy or not they might have been in other times, in other places. But nevertheless, exercise is a fundamental of human health. And yet, what do? Very, very many of us, of you, have jobs that involve as little physical exercise as possible. Machines replace any sort of movement. In fact, for some reason, we even resist moving. Workstations are sitting down. Why? It's interesting have you ever tried to, in your workplace, have a standing workstation? It's interesting. Trying to get that through the health and safety and the HR levels of governance is an interesting one. But anyway, the point is this. As you know, exercise is a fundamental. But how much? Doing what? Yeah. And some of the other questions around the specifics of exercise are good to explore and reflect on. You see, the computer and the age of the computer and the consequence of the computer and the internet and the way we work now is incalculable. We sit down now for often 8 hours a day, more, go home, do some more at night, sitting in bed or on the couch. The amount of sitting we do creates all sorts of degrees of problems when it comes to our health. Bowel health, for example, musculature as well. We sit far too much. And the other influences of technologies, there's an image there of a watch. I'm not so much sure that that's the point, but we're, jury's out on, mobile phones or different types of mobile phones and smartphones, watches disrupting circadian rhythm, the amount of electromagnetic radiation that we have in our houses affecting our sleep is extraordinary as well. What is the impact of Wi-Fi and the internet? And essentially, at the core of it, simply yet other ways of losing touch with our nature and nature as well. technologies have a lot to answer for. No, it's not about the technology, it's just a thing. It's the way we use it, isn't it? So all of these things, hygiene, sleep, the types of technologies and influences around us also influence our health. These have changed over time, as have our perceptions of what creates disease. In other times, in other traditions, as you're going to learn about, in Paleolithic times, in Chinese medicine, in India, in Ayurvedic traditions, the cause of disease is not bugs, it's not microbes, it's not bacteria, it's luck, or it's being possessed, or it's not having enough faith. It's only in the last 100 years, really, have we been interested in bugs, in germ theory, in washing, in cleaning. The attitude being that it's about one's susceptibility to disease as opposed to the actual bugs which create illness. Perhaps an understanding that both are important. One's susceptibility, one's availability to disease, as well as the presence of microbes as well. Are we evolving? Probably not. Probably are. I'm not sure. I have no idea, really. But we are changing, and there's something that's happened in the late 20th and 21st century with that posture that we see there. In fact, it's not that posture so much. It's this posture, isn't it? I don't know, I'll probably do it side on. Maybe this way. This one here. You know? The mobile phone that we see folks in the train and at restaurants. Often, at a restaurant yesterday, 4 people, all of them on their phones, not talking to each other. Amazing. But that posture, not good for us. And food. One of the founders, one of the big shots in the world of natural medicine, the founder of homeopathy, Hahnemann, wrote this amazing paragraph in 1810. He was talking about good lifestyle when you're trying to recover from a disease, a chronic disease. He was also talking about the maintenance of good health. That's an extraordinary list. At the top of it was coffee. He said, avoid coffee. And then the list went on. Vegetables with medicinal properties, perfumes, ice cream. Extraordinary thing, wearing woolen clothing close to the skin. A list, a long, long list. He says asparagus with long green tips and a meat that has gone off. An incredible list, which in 1810, for a physician, as advice to a person that was ill, he was saying, avoid this. And it's an extraordinary list when people look at it these days, when homeopathic students and naturopathic students look at the list, they have a good giggle. But it was advice about how to eat, what to do, how to live. And even back then, 204 years ago, the founder of homeopathy was talking about lifestyle. Please sleep, drink water, do gentle exercise, and above all, eat well. It's not a new idea. Hippocrates said it. 450 BC, let food be thy medicine. Incredible. So it's not as if there's never been advice about food and nutrition. There's an assessment coming up in this particular subject, which really gets you to go and investigate that, how ideas around nutrition have changed over time. But important bullet points along the journey. Leonardo da Vinci was responsible for mapping, drawing, and hypothesizing about metabolism. Lind, 1747, is accredited with, along with a bunch of other sailors, with information about the necessity to take limes, lime juice, lemons, anything that was acidic and citrusy on long sea journeys because of the relationship between scurvy and a lack of that food. Funk in 1812, looking at vitamins along the way. To the extent now that we can't get away from advice about food and the way to eat. A lot of it, really, at the end of the day, comes from different authorities. What's your authority when it comes to food? Is it the government food pyramid? No longer a food pyramid, but it looks like a pizza to me. Who's lobbying, and who's the loudest lobbyer to have 5 slices of bread and 18 chunks of lamb or whatever it might be on that government advice? How varied from that piece of government advice about nutrition is your own authority when it comes to food? Yeah? Is food a big part of your life? I have a suspicion that it is. Who's dominating that conversation about the way to do it? Is it Jamie Oliver? Is it the paleo diet? Is it an essential for life, or is it something that's just there as a reward and a pleasure in your life as well? Food's complex, isn't it? Here's a question. What's your first memory of food? Do you have one? What is it? What's your first memory of food? Here's another good question. What was the mood like at the dining room table when you were a kid? What was the dynamic at the table? Was there a table? Was everyone sitting in front of the TV? A couple of questions for you, but they're both about food and the changing relationship that we have around food. We're in the 21st century. Is there anything that's not processed? Yes, of course there is, in the very small part of the supermarket, or at least forget the supermarket, down at the farmer's market. But in the supermarket, shelves and shelves and shelves of preserving and canning and pasteurizing, and there's a whole history around that, isn't there? Isn't it interesting that one of the founders of naturopathy, Kellogg, with his ideas around cornflakes, is now also synonymous with heavily processed food as well. So a lot of our food is processed these days. Maybe 90 to 100 years ago, there was not a piece of food on the planet that wasn't organic. And today it is significantly different. What's your definition of health when it comes to food? The one I like is, would your grandmother recognize it? Is it produced? And keep it simple. Those are the sorts of attitudes that sometimes you hear along the journey with people when it comes to these things. Food needs to be convenient in the 21st century for all of those other reasons that we've seen. The amount of sugars and preservatives and whatevers that are in there is important. The debate about GM foods is one that is going to dominate our media and our lives as well, especially if you're studying nutritional medicine. You will need to have an opinion about that, I'm sure. And our agriculture is constantly changing. As I've just mentioned there, genetically modified foods, as our land is stripped of its natural mineral content. The monocultures that we see across Europe, the UK, Australia, those millions and millions of miles of one plant, as opposed to millions of plants in one field. We've got the exact opposite, don't we? And of course, the amount of medicine that is required to keep that one crop upright is extraordinary as well. So these are the building blocks of health that we often talk about, and the purpose of today was really to talk about how they have changed through time. And now we're going to move into your lectures on the foundations of naturopathic medicine, going into significant depth about the specifics around food there. So this was intended to be a bridge from what's gone before to what's coming up. All right, many thanks for your time. Take care and enjoy your day. Talk soon. Bye.